Welcome to Commissioner Krugliak.
While we're giving it just an extra 30 seconds, those commissioners who didn't have a chance to do a sound check yet, if you feel like doing it, this is a great time.
Oh,
Okay.
hi, Barbara. Hi.
Hello.
There she is.
Hello.
Hello, Commissioner Diaz. All right, Aaron, do you think we're good to start?
Yes, we have more than a quorum at this point, Chair Bain.
I think we got most of the ones that we were expecting. Very good. So noting that the time is 5:31, I'll call this meeting to order. Welcome again, fellow commissioners, and of course, members of the public who are joining us, as well as staff and council, to the regular meeting of the County of San Diego's Independent Redistricting Commission. Let's begin with our clerk, Aaron Demarest, for information about today's meeting. Aaron.
Thank you, Chair Bain. Any members of the public who wish to provide oral testimony during today's meeting, please review the instructions posted on the redistricting website at www.sandiegocounty.gov/redistricting. We ask that individuals who wish to speak submit an online request to speak form in advance for planning purposes. However, all requests to speak from the public that are made at today's meeting will be honored. In addition, agendas, minutes, and supporting materials for the Commission's meetings are posted on the redistricting website, including instructions to request translation. Meeting agendas are translated into Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese, Filipino, Arabic, Japanese, Korean, and Laotian as required by law. Thanks, Chair Bain.
Thank you, Aaron. The next item on the agenda is the roll call. Aaron, could you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Before I call the roll, I'd like to note for the record that all commissioners are participating via teleconference. As such, all votes will be handled by a roll call vote. I'll ask the commissioners to please unmute your microphone and say here or present. Commissioner Bain.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Katerina.
Here.
Commissioner Chen.
Here.
Commissioner Diaz.
Here.
Commissioner Dostal notified us that she's unable to attend tonight's meeting. Commissioner Garcia.
Here.
Commissioner Hanson.
Here.
Commissioner Inman.
Here.
Commissioner Krugliak.
Here.
Commissioner Larson.
Here.
Commissioner Pons.
Here.
Commissioner Russ.
Here.
And Commissioner Servin notified us that he will be joining the meeting later this evening due to a work conflict.
Very good. Thank you, Aaron. The next item on the agenda is non-agenda public communication speakers. This is an opportunity for the public to address the commission on subject matters within the commission's jurisdiction, but not on as an item for today's agenda. The only action the commission may take is a referral to staff. Aaron, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on non-agenda matters?
Yes, thank you, Chair Bain. We received one advance request to speak on non-agenda public communication. I'll also check to see if there are any other members of the public who have joined the Zoom meeting who would like to speak. If you could please raise a virtual hand. If you can press *9 if you have dialed in by phone, or click the raise hand button if you've joined by computer. So we'll begin with the speaker who submitted a request to speak in advance, William Teeters. And you'll have 2 minutes to address the commission. If you could, as a reminder, these are for matters that are not on today's posted agenda, but are within the commission's jurisdiction. So you may begin. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Bill Teeter. I live in Encinitas. As you all are aware, the delivery date of the census data has been postponed until the end of September to the state. And according to the state site, the availability of that data to this commission is now at the end of November. That makes the timeline for the commission's work toward supporting the 2022 election cycle while following the process that ensure fairness, inclusion, and transparency infeasible. I have seen no timeline that can deliver the product that this commission is chartered to deliver. There's little benefit to the people of San Diego in delivering maps that will have no credibility because they are the result of a rushed process. Yet the activities of the commission don't seem to reflect this fact. Working toward releasing RFPs and awarding contracts that will either have to be canceled or extensively modified is a waste of limited funding and vendor resources. What is better for the people of San Diego, delivering a substandard product or looking at alternatives such as using the current boundaries for the 2022 election cycle? Now, you have probably been told that taking such an action is outside your charter and authority, but in a larger sense, isn't your charter about doing what's best for the people of San Diego? With the turmoil, suspicion, and controversy of the last election still fresh, what we need more than anything is openness and stability in our elections. I believe the commission should be discussing realistic alternatives that respond to the lack of census data and are focusing on developing RFPs, arrangements, processes, and tools that will capture the good work the commission has done thus far and be used eventually regardless of the schedule, and then figuring how they can be made dormant and revived at a later date. As a taxpayer, I'm willing to support paying the cost of a fair and equitable redistricting process, but I'm not willing to pay for it twice. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And again, I'll ask if any of the other members of the public would like to address the board. If they could please press *9 if they've dialed in by phone, or they can click the raise hand feature if they've joined by computer. Chair Boehm, I'm not seeing any other requests to address the commission on non-agenda public communication, but I will note that the commission's log of ex parte communications has been received, has been updated on the website. So that concludes the request for non-agenda public communications. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much for the comments, and thank you, Aaron, for the update. We'll move on now to commission business. The next item is the approval of the minutes, actually two sets of minutes, one from the March 11th, 2021 regular meeting and one from the March 18th, 2021 special meeting that was held in conjunction with the Industry Day for the Outreach and Communications RFP. Aaron, are there any requests from the public to speak on this item?
There are not. If there are any speakers who would like to speak, if they could please raise a virtual hand at this time, we will call on you. Seeing none. Thanks, Chair Boehm.
Okay. Because we have 2 minutes to approve, I do want to give commissioners a chance to make comment or read or discuss them if they like. But to do that, we do need a motion for approval. I will ask for a motion to approve both, with the understanding that that means discussion is available to both. So is there a motion to approve both sets of minutes?
My motion, we approve both sets of minutes.
Moved by Commissioner Chen. Is there a second? Commissioner Brown, thank you very much. Is there discussion? Commissioner Hanson.
Regarding the second set of minutes on the Industry Day, do we have any information about the people that were present that did not speak? And is that available to us for our information?
Barbara, do you want to comment on that? Barbara Hanson, Barbara Jimenez, sorry, not Barbara Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, let me check. I know we put together a summary. I just need to pull it up of the different actions that were taken and the number of people, as well as the number of people that then went into BiNet. What we might not have is if someone only had a phone number, then we may not have the actual name of the person or the entity, because some people, it only reflects a phone number.
Thank you. That would be helpful to know as we move forward with another Industry Day to gauge the response to our outreach.
Commissioner, I just want to ask you, the minutes do note that there were a total of 32 members of the public present. Will that be sufficient for the minutes themselves, and we can just record the names when staff has done research?
Yes, that would be fine for the minutes, but I'm just asking beyond that.
Right.
For more detail.
Very good. So Barbara, if we can capture that and make to share it in the right way publicly, that would be useful.
Thank you, Chair.
Good. Commissioner Russ.
Okay.
Commissioner Russ, you unmuted and then muted again.
I'll get this down. I'll get it down. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend the industry session on March 11th, but I did, or the 18th, I'm sorry. But I did listen to the recording. And I did have a question as to, as I was listening to the people who were responding, I did not hear anybody who was a potential bidder, if I'm correct. They were mainly people who were concerned about certain issues, but nobody was a potential bidder. And I'd like to know if there were any potential bidders that were at least listening in on the phone conversation.
Barbara, do you want to respond on that as well?
Yes, thank you. There could be potential bidders. What we have found sometimes with events such as this is folks may not indicate that they're a bidder. They're more just listening. It also at pre-proposal conferences, they oftentimes do indicate if they're an organization and they're considering bidding, because then they sometimes want to pair up with others and then that information is shared. But it would be really difficult, especially in this virtual world where you may not know if someone is a bidder or not. What we do know is we had a number of folks that actually went into the BuyNet to look at the proposal and what we have posted. And once it actually gets posted as a full RFP, we anticipate they'll be signing up also to get all the information.
Commissioner Russ, is that good? Very well. Any further questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, Aaron, we'll go ahead and could you please call the roll for the vote?
Yes, thank you, Chair Boehm. As a reminder, I'll be calling all the names in random order. We'll begin with Commissioner Inman.
Aye.
Commissioner Larson.
Aye.
Vice Chair Katarina.
Aye.
Commissioner Serban is absent. Commissioner Krugliak.
Aye.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Dostal's also absent. Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Russ.
Although I wasn't there for the 18th meeting, I did listen to the recording, and I vote aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Diaz.
Aye.
Chair Bing.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Pons.
Aye.
Vice Chair Garcia.
Aye.
And that motion passes unanimously with all commissioners who are present voting aye.
Very good. Thank you all. We'll move on to item 2 on the agenda for commission business. This is an update on the redistricting timeline based on Senate Bill 594, authorized by Senator Glazer. Commissioners will recall that at our last meeting, Caroline Smith from the County Office of Strategy and Intergovernmental Affairs discussed this bill and related issues that would amend the elections code related to redistricting to try to address the delay in receipt of census data. We'll hear today from Margaret Leone, the Redistricting Council, with an update on the impact to our commission's redistricting timeline. Before I turn to Marguerite, let me just note that this is an informational item with no required action. So in keeping with our usual process, after Marguerite speaks, we'll first hear any public comments and then provide an opportunity for commissioners to ask clarifying questions and offer clarifying comments. With that, Marguerite, please.
Thank you very much, Chair Boehm. And we have a PowerPoint on the materials that I'm about to present to you. We have discussed this at many of our recent meetings since we've been informed in February of the additional delay in the census. This is an update of a topic we have discussed before. There is significant new news, and if we go to the second slide, The Census Bureau last week issued an additional notification that there will be census data available, but in a non-user-friendly format, let me put it that way, by mid to late August 2021. The data is going to be available in what's called the legacy format. The legacy format is the raw data for the entire state. That legacy format data, which will come out hopefully a month and a half sooner than the user-friendly data, will be very similar to the data that was used for the 2011 redistricting. What it will not have is the required adjustments by the statewide database, but there will be census data, 2020 census data available to the state, hopefully by mid to late August of 2021. Next slide. As you are aware, the data then needs to be adjusted by the California statewide database. Those adjustments are primarily to merge particular California-oriented data, and in particular, the reallocation of state prisoners to place or census block of residents. I have done a little bit of investigation and have not been able to ascertain whether the statewide database will independently process the legacy data, although it would be possible to do so. This is all brand new data. This isn't a criticism of the database at all. That information just is not available at this time. I do want to point out that the deadline for this commission to enact its maps has not yet changed, but all of this is in flux. So going to the next slide. We talked about, we mentioned at our last meeting, the Glazer bill, which is a placeholder to address these issues for all of the jurisdictions that are required to redistrict in time for the 2022 congressional, state, and local elections. There were an initial set of amendments to the Glazer bill, and I can tell you that a new set is being worked on, but has not yet been published. I would expect those to come out likely prior to your next meeting. But what the current amendments do is clarify that your plan is timely if it is enacted by December 15. In conjunction with a conservative approach to your calendar, we had allowed for the referendum time to be completed before December 15 on the theory that the law is really not effective until the referendum period is over. The one amendment, one of the two amendments that has been dropped in clarifies that you can adopt on or before the 15th of December, and the referendum period will run thereafter. Now, if there were a successful referendum, which is unlikely, the matter would end up into the courts on how it would be handled. But with regard to your duties, the amendment would clarify that your action is timely if completed by the 15th of December. And then there was a second amendment that doesn't affect you, but I'll mention it just so that we're up to speed on the Glazer bill. And that amendment is that counties who generally act by ordinance, which requires 2 readings and a period of time in between, are empowered to enact their redistricting by resolution. That saves some time in that it doesn't require a second reading. Now, that doesn't affect our processes because you will pass it by motion or resolution, not by ordinance. So moving on to the next slide, as I mentioned to you, the legislature is continuing to work on further amendments. I know they are looking at issues having to do with special districts. I know they are in consultation with many of the organizations for cities and counties, and many options have been discussed. Some of them are very significant proposals, including moving the primary election date or moving the deadline for completion of the redistricting further back from December, which would require adjusting all of the elections deadlines. So as you can imagine, there are many, many stakeholders who are affected by this legislation. And one of those stakeholders is our county's independent commission. Now, moving on to the next slide, I wanted to bring to your attention a couple of timing provisions in the law that affect the commission that are meaningful and significant, but time-consuming in the emergency situation that we find ourselves. One of those is a 3-week waiting period that is written into the law. It functions for the commission as well as for counties, and I believe it's also in the law for cities. So if this commission receives data earlier than 90 days before the deadline, you are not able to release draft maps for 3 weeks. So that is a period of time intended for the data to get out there, understood, reviewed by public and stakeholders before mapping begins. This would mean on a practical basis to you, if the data were to become available, and I think the deadline is before September 15, there would be this waiting period. And you would still have, that would take up 3 weeks of the 3 months that you have to do the job. And I'm saying 3 months generously because we are also working in conjunction with the registrar of voters. Now, the registrar has been very flexible and willing to accommodate, but there is some review that has to be done on the back end. But I did want to point out this 3-week waiting period to you. The next slide is another extended time period that makes sense if we had, and may still make sense depending on what the legislature does. But I want to point it out to you. Your meetings must be noticed 7 days ahead of time. Ordinarily, a public meeting can be noticed 72 hours ahead of time. So, and when your meetings are in the period when you're mapping, your meeting notice has to attach the draft map. So the extended notice period makes it difficult for the commission to notice seriatim meetings quickly, let's say every 3 days, because of the requirement for 7 days notice and the map attached. And that is unique to this process. It's an extended notice period. The intent is a laudable one, to provide plenty of notice for the public to become involved. It becomes difficult for the commission to act quickly under circumstances where the data you need is delayed and the deadline hasn't changed. So I wanted to point out the 7-day notice to you. And then the last, it's interesting. This provision is only in your commission law and in the commission law for Los Angeles. And your final public hearings must expand over a period of 30 days. So if by hook or by some unfortunate event, you did not get your data, let's say until the beginning of November, as we have just heard, I don't have that information. But were that to happen in the unusual circumstances of this redistricting, with the 30-day requirement and the 7-day notice period, the commission would have a very difficult time acting quickly. And I want to just point these features of the law out to you in the event the deadline stays at December 15. So that's just the update I wanted to give you today. I did want to reiterate what Caroline Smith, who attended our last meeting, told you. She stands ready to work with this commission to address, stay on top of, communicate as appropriate with regard to these issues. That offer remains out there and genuine. I believe it is important, and I'm sure you do too, to keep on top of these. As soon as we are aware of the amendments that are out there, we will certainly circulate them. The item for discussion is other actions, concerns, involvement that this commission may wish to undertake with regard to, number one, the pending deadline, and number two, the opportunities presented by the Glazer bill. Chair Boehm, that's my presentation. Discussion would be welcome. Questions are welcome.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, and the hands are popping up already, which is great. First of all, thank you, Marguerite, for all that expert assessment, advice, and insight. It's incredibly valuable and much appreciated. Before I open the door for commissioner questions, let me open the door first via Aaron to see if there are any requests from the public to speak on this item.
Thank you, Chair Boehm. I do see one hand raised from David Holtzman. So, David, would you like to address the board on this item, or the commission on this item?
Yes, I sure would. My name is David Holtzman. I am a commissioner on the County of Los Angeles Citizens Redistricting Commission. I should have let you, I should have sent an email to your staff about this earlier today. But I wanted to let you know that the commission I'm on had a discussion of this matter last night at our regular meeting. And we could not adopt a position on any of the ideas we were discussing because the report from this ad hoc working group I'm leading was not agendized for such action, for adopting positions. But if you'll go to the website for our commission, redistricting.lacounty.gov, you can find meeting materials from last night that include a handout with some of the ideas we discussed that we might possibly want to support for addressing this delay in census data. And also a few other ideas came up and were put on the screen during the meeting. So whenever our meeting recording is available, you might want to fast forward to that to see the ideas we've been discussing. And that's it for now. I just wanted to let you know those things.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public logged into the Zoom meeting who would like to address the commission on this issue? If so, please raise your virtual hand now. I'm not seeing any other hands, Chair Boehm, so that concludes the public testimony on this item.
Very good. Thank you, Erin. And thank you, Mr. Holtzman. I'm actually going to break with usual procedure here because this is a fellow redistricting commissioner who was just speaking. And I will ask staff and invite fellow commissioners to review what Commissioner Holtzman mentioned on the LA County website, not least because of what Marguerite mentioned with certain actions applying uniquely to the San Diego County and LA County commissions. With that, for questions and comments now from commissioners, I have Commissioner Inman, then Commissioner Pons, then Commissioner Russ. So with that in mind, Commissioner Inman, please go ahead.
Thank you for the update, Marguerite. Very useful. And I have some clarifying questions about what some of these dates mean. The first one is around, we can't create draft maps or present draft maps, I believe you said, until after 30 days from when we receive the data from the state of California. Can we be looking at creation of said maps during that period? Can the demographer go off and start doing their work so that when 30 days pass, we actually have draft maps to present?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Inman. The language is that draft maps are not to be released. However, there is a significant amount of work that can be done before time, including analysis of current districts, identification of sensitive populations from a voting rights perspective. We will have the American Community Survey available for that. And also the identification of areas of specific sensitivity with regard to population balance. And in my opinion, all of that work can be begun. The actual release of maps should be using the data set received from the state, but it will be based on the legacy data and the ACS as adjusted.
Okay, thank you. And one other question, if I could. The other one that struck me is we have to release draft maps 7 days in advance of discussion in an IRC meeting. So we have a draft map, it goes on the agenda as something we want to adopt. So there's a motion on the floor for this draft map. If during the process of that motion, we try to amend the motion and say, move track blah, blah, blah from 1 to 2. It doesn't sound like we can do that in a meeting. We would then have to wait 7 more days. So that's my question.
Yes, and I appreciate the question. I think the intent of the 7-day provision and the requirement that your agenda include the map is to make sure the public's on board with where we are, what the map looks like, etc. I would interpret that provision conservatively to mean if you amend the map, it needs to be renoticed so the public knows what you are considering to adopt. And the 7-day notice period would require a 7-day period between those 2 meetings. The amendment would be made, the notice for the meeting with the new map put on, and then the meeting 7 days later. It is a very, it's a provision meant to encourage, to inform the public and encourage participation, but it's time consuming, as you are pointing out, and I agree with your interpretation.
Excellent questions. Thank you for that. Commissioner Pons.
Yes, thank you, Marguerite. So I am very concerned because I am looking at the process, and I would imagine and envision a process was designed based on the 2010 districting process. And so we had approximately 365 days to do our business. And so those timelines have been compressed, and it's all around the data, the census data. So I've heard the timeline of December 15th, and working from right to left, that sounds achievable, but the date I'm looking at is actually in September to November. And that's when we're supposed to finalize the redistricting map. And so the 15th of December is end date. The starting of end date is actually September and actually July when we start supposedly developing the map. So I don't know if we can do all of that if we don't get the data until August. So we are losing, nearly 3 months to do our business. And that's based on census data. And I've looked at the 2010 census data, and it is very challenging for me to understand. And I don't know what the process looks like now and how that data has been more user-friendly. But I got to tell you, the 2010 census data is not user-friendly. And it would be very daunting for me to understand that information and put into a context of a map within a 3-month period, let alone a 1-month period. So I'm very concerned that trying to do everything within a shortened period of time would not be achievable. And the two rheostats is to extend the election date or to extend the redistricting process itself, and not to compress everything within the shortened timelines. I just don't think that's a rheostat that we can control.
I am very supportive of your concerns, Commissioner Pons. Yeah, it is the compressed timeline in itself undermines the purpose of this statute. And the few little timing elements that I pointed out to you can help a bit, but still do not provide the extended period of time to consider public input and make sure that the public is educated about commission proceedings, maps, thoughts, balancing, etc. I can only support your concerns. At this time, I cannot tell you whether an extension of the deadline to perhaps January 15th or February 15th is under consideration. I can tell you that the court extended the state's deadline to February 15. Now, were that to occur, it's going to require an adjustment of elections deadlines. And it seems to me that that would have to occur anyway with the state commission authorized to go out for 2 months. So that seems to me to be less drastic than changing the date of the primary, but would need other considerations, but it would provide you an additional 60 days to do your work.
I appreciate that. I mean, we can be innovative, but to be creative to the point of not doing our business correctly, I do think that would be an injustice on our part in the charter that we've been ascribed to. So I just wanted to go on the record because I've looked at the dates and I'm not looking at the 15th of December. I'm actually looking at September as a start date for creating the maps. And so that's no time if we get the data in August. I mean, that's nothing based on what we have to do with that data. And it's just too daunting. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Pons. Points well worth considering. Commissioner Russ, and then unless there are any other commissioners, good, okay. So Commissioner Russ, then Commissioner Chen, then Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Russ, please.
Yeah, I share Commissioner Pons' concerns, and I hear you loud and clear, Marguerite, about, being able to perhaps crash some of these timelines, but it seems like everything's on critical path, and we really can't crash any of this. My question is, and you did mention this, Marguerite, about setting back for example, the primary election period. There's a statutory period of time between the adoption of the districts and the primary, is there not? And how easy is that to set that back? And then, of course, you have the general election, which really cannot be set back.
Yeah. There is a statutory period of time. Your districts need to be in place 174 days before the primary election. And if you calculate it out, that falls on the 15th of December. So if you look in the code, that date isn't there. 174 days is there. All right. And then the in lieu filing period opens about 28 days later.
Okay. And is there a statutory time between the primary and the general?
That I believe is set in the Constitution. The date of the general election.
Yeah, right. So,
but can you compress it? The answer is yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The answer is yes.
All right. So there's where some slack could be taken off.
Yes, because as you're aware, the legislature changes the date of the primary with some frequency.
Exactly. Of course, now they wanted to pull the primary early on instead of us being later, so that we have more of a say in the general. This non-user friendly data, this legacy data. I mean, these are data sets that have been parsed before by demographers, by the state. And as I understand it, the main parsing by the state is to reconcile the incarcerated individuals to their proper, to their home of record. Why could we not, if a demographer has used these data before, these non-user friendly, and why couldn't that be, if we had a demographer that could use that, would that not be a solution? And that would keep us from having to wait till the September deadline when we get the parsed data from, when the state gets the data from the Census Bureau, and then they parse it and give it to us. And that's really a rhetorical question, Marguerite. I don't expect you to answer that, but I just wonder if a demographer couldn't handle that data set.
Commissioner, that data was the data that was used 10 years ago for the redistricting. Generally, it's processed by the state. A demographer can process it. For all we know, the statewide database may be gearing up to process it, make it available to be used in a more user-friendly format for local redistricting, and also doing the prisoner adjustment. I just do not have that information. I will keep on it. I made phone calls to find out what the statewide database is going to do. And as soon as I have some information, I will bring that back. But I agree with you. An experienced demographer, and there are good experienced demographers out there, will be able to work with the legacy data.
Yeah, and that legacy data, I mean, it won't be 2010 census data.
No.
It'll be 2020.
It's 2020.
It might be in BASIC or COBOL or some old ancient language. But
it's a text thing, and I went to look at it, but we used to get it that way all the time. And what is helpful is the census geography has already been published. So the blocks are in place. the blocks we're going to be using and how they may have changed from 2010 is already available. It's the data that we're waiting on,
Right.
but the legacy data will be reported in the census geography.
And the only thing that the legacy will not have is the parsing by the state for
Yes.
incarceration.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and I'm trying to remember some of the training that we had a couple of months ago, and I'm forgetting how many individuals that is.
I do not have that data yet. The statewide database does, but they haven't published it at this point. I don't have a sense of whether the number of reallocated prisoners to San Diego County will make a material difference to district boundaries.
Yeah.
The county is very big and the population is large. So.
Yeah, we're asking you questions, Marguerite, that they're more rhetorical in some regards because there's no
No, but
way.
they're good questions. They're good questions. The commission's right now considering its demographer, and these are excellent questions.
Thank you.
Before we go on, and Commissioner Hanson, I saw your hand, so I've got you on the list. Let me just compliment everyone for the questions to date. Yeah, they might be partly rhetorical, but I think they also are helpful for Marguerite with all that information collecting you're continuing to undertake, and I think that's useful. I would invite commissioners to be thinking of other things that can be done. We don't necessarily have to talk about them today, but it is certainly within our power to speak up publicly and to other segments of state and local government if needed within the bounds of our mandate and code. But there are ideas we might want to consider as we go along. I'm also noting the time. I do know that we've got some action items to come, but I think they're familiar to commissioners. So I will continue to listen for commissioners saying we need to move on. But for right now, I think this conversation is useful enough. I think there are a couple other commissioners who would like to be heard that it's worth continuing the discussion. So with that, right now I have Commissioner Chen, then Commissioner Brown, then Commissioner Diaz, then Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner Chen, please.
So one comment, two questions. The comment is I looked at the LA County Redistricting Commission site, and one of the ideas they had that I haven't heard proposed yet is to do away with the primary and use rank ordering instead. I thought that was interesting. Questions I have. One is, I think the gentleman from the public who spoke mentioned that we wouldn't get census data until the end of November. I'm wondering if anybody on this Zoom call has heard anything like that. Or if that's just a vicious rumor. The second question is, along with what Commissioner Russ was saying, if we're getting data in August that's just not user-friendly, can we pay someone to reformat that into a user-friendly package that we could actually use?
Commissioner Chen, the end of November, I had not heard that date. Those of us who attended the Common Cause Conference heard from the statewide database that once they receive the data in late September, they will need 4 weeks to process it. So that takes us up to the beginning of November. So I have heard the November word, but not the end of November. So that's number one. But I don't consider the beginning of November to be any benefit to us. It's very, very late in the timeline, as Commissioner Ponce has pointed out. And then your second question was about, can we pay somebody to process it? Your subcommittee and this commission has been working very hard on bringing a demographer on board. And I think this has to be one of the areas where the commission inquires of potential offerers, whether they can work with the legacy data. Anybody who did redistricting in 2010 should be able to.
Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, thank you. I'm good.
Excellent. Good points. Commissioner Brown?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
I have the same concerns as Commissioner Pons. That's really squeezing us, and they've been pushing it back. Every time we have a meeting, they push it back, it seems like. So what are the possibilities it's going to continue to be pushed back to where we have 3 days to get it done or something along those lines? I'm kind of being, you know, I mean, at that point, something's got to move, because all of the they must be pushing all of the redistricting data back. And so that leads to my second question, second comment, which would be, if Los Angeles and San Diego are both under a little bit different timeline than the rest of the state, can we get our data done first and given to us first before anybody else, so that we get a little bit more of a jump on it?
Little jump on it. The states are all receiving the data at the same time. I do not know the schedule for the statewide database to roll it out, but I know the director, and I'm happy to make that call.
Okay, I think that's all I had. If I think of another one, I'll ask it sometime. Thank you.
I want to thank Commissioner Brown for bringing a lot of smiles to the commission in that question, but it's still very useful. Okay, right now I have Commissioner Diaz, then Commissioner Hanson, then Commissioner Pons. Commissioner Diaz.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you for the presentation on the update. I guess one of my concerns was the user-friendly portion of the data. You know, I know that one of the requirements is that we have some sort of way that the public can have access to this data on our website and participate in the map making process. I know other jurisdictions have used that census data in that way before. And so I'm just curious, because there was that timeline that got pushed to September 30th. And is that what that was referring to? And if so, how would we work around this idea of, you know, fulfilling that requirement that we have?
I'm going to go back to the legacy data. The legacy data has been used by redistricting authorities and by the public since 2010 to institute new districts. So the software providers and the demographer can provide a program that is user-friendly for the public. In other words, the lack of the formatted data from the end of September should not hinder public participation. It will hinder, it will hinder finalization of the plan because we have to use that data. But in my view, as many of you have pointed out, with appropriate professional support, we can get started and the public can participate.
Okay. Commissioner Diaz, that's good. 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 Commissioner Hanson, then Commissioner Pons. Because of time constraints, I will start to ask commissioners, if you have any final requests to speak, please get them in after Commissioner Hanson. But Commissioner Hanson, please go ahead.
My question was about the gentleman from Encinitas and the question of November. So I think that's already been answered. Thanks.
My pleasure.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Pons.
Yes, I just want to know if we're going to have an opportunity for a motion, because I understand that the LA Commission established an ad hoc committee to evaluate this issue, to determine the feasibility of executing it within the compressed timelines. And maybe that's something that we should consider, standing up an ad hoc committee to do a laser focused review of the process and the timelines associated with it, to see if it's actually feasible with the established deadlines, or maybe we can adjust it right or left or do some sort of modifications. But I think we just need to laser focus on this. And I think this would definitely be something that an ad hoc committee would be useful for.
Commissioner Pons, I, for one, share that interest, at least in exploring the option. My suggestion would be not to do that tonight, because I would want to have the benefit of staff and council's input on specifying what the purpose of that ad hoc commission should be, especially in terms of reporting up to us for shorter term action. I say that because some of the comments I've heard, not just from Marguerite, which are incredibly valuable, but from my fellow commissioners, has already generated a couple ideas in my mind. What I would suggest is that we instead task both staff and council to take a look at that, all those issues, with that specific laser purpose in mind of how do we deal with this timeline, to continue collecting all the information that is already being collected so well, but including going to the statewide database and finding out more of what's available to know. And with the commission's permission, I would suggest asking staff and council for recommendations that we might be able to do now. I won't extend the time on my own with this, except to ask Marguerite, it would be interesting to know, are these amendments already adopted? Is the next package going to be adopted? And do you have a sense that the key people in Sacramento, both in the legislature and elsewhere, are thinking about the broader impacts of this, particularly on the San Diego and Los Angeles County Commissions? But before I ask Marguerite to respond to that, Commissioner Ponce, would that handle it acceptably for today?
I mean, it does. We just moved the goalpost another month, and I don't think time is on our side. But if you think that's the best approach, but I am sure they're going to come back with a recommendation that says we need to laser focus on this issue. And I'm sure the same questions that's been brought up today would be brought up next month. But if that's the approach that the commission wants to take, I'm okay with it.
Well, and also I should have amended that to be commissioners, of course, should be providing information and questions and comments beyond what happened today. Barbara, that's, and Aaron, just to check, that's fully within our procedures, right? So I'll invite people to send comments. Barbara, perhaps you and Marguerite can figure out what deadline you'd like to have those comments by. And so we can make this more of a running start if we're so inclined to do that. Okay. Marguerite, I asked you a couple of questions and after promising not to, so I really should give you the floor one more time.
Yeah, one more time and I'll be quick. Yes. I want to be very sensitive to Commissioner Ponce's recommendation and advise that I think we will have new amendments within a matter of a week. And I think we evaluate where we stand based on those amendments, that we can do a better job for you once we have those in hand. And there are many, many stakeholders on this. There are only two like you, San Diego and Los Angeles, with your statutorily established independent commissions. So in my view, I would support an agenda item. Our next meeting is the 8th, correct? Which just 2 weeks away. I would support an agenda item where this commission sets a path forward based on the best information we have and the most recent amendments. And at that time, staff can, and I can work together, staff is on top of this, to bring back a fail-safe timeline and a reasonable timeline that you can base your analysis on and your discussion.
Very good. Barbara Jimenez, anything you wanted to add?
No, Marguerite covered it perfectly. We're working very closely on it, and the amendment I think will bring, and I'll also ensure the connection to Caroline Smith in case we need her to come back or she has any updates as well. Thank you.
I'll just offer a couple closing thoughts. Marguerite, as you continue to collect information, I hope that part of that will include the Secretary of State's office, because she has some familiarity with this area. I'd also, again, like to thank commissioners not only for their insightful questions and listening carefully, but for also recognizing public concerns. And by that, I mean, of course, not just what we heard tonight, but what we've heard in the past. I really do think there is a way forward here that, first of all, reflects what Commissioner Pons and others have said. This is going to be darn hard, but also reflects our interest in getting it right and doing everything we can to get it right, including ample opportunities for the public to see what's going on, review it, comment on it, and provide input. And I do attach some importance to how we've been doing the ad hoc work that we're about to hear more about, as well as the RFP organization and all the good work of staff and council in giving us the advice, and in council's case in particular, the expert advice on these topics that really helps guide us, and we can plug it in all the different places we need. So with that, I'll go ahead and move on to the next item unless there are any other final comments. Very good. Thank you for that great discussion. Moving on. Item 3, but that's okay. We only have a few more items. Discussion and possible approval of training continuum and implementation proposed by the Ad Hoc Committee on Commissioner Training is our next item. For that, we'll have a brief presentation from Commissioner Pons. I will remind the Commission that this Ad Hoc Committee on Commissioner Training was formed with a 3-part purpose. First, refine in detail, and they're interlinked, but first, refine in detail the current approved Commission's list of training topics, including guest speakers. Second, develop a recommended plan for those to appear on future agendas for our Commission's regular meetings in coordination with staff and council. And third, to develop a recommended timeline. Commissioner Pons, I'll turn to you. Thank you.
Yes, I will be brief and I will not cover all the information that's been passed out in the read ahead. So everything that was asked to be done has been done. And I want to thank all of the commissioners for providing the training topics, categories, and information to populate the database. I want to thank the staff and Barbara for leading that effort and creating the structure for the database and the repository. And so what we have is the beginning of a very good training continuum. This is a living document / process, so this is not the end of it. So if you come across additional information that's not already been presented to you in this document here, feel free to pass it over to Barbara and she'll put it where it belongs. The next step is for the staff to go in and to look at providing additional fidelity to the continuum to make sure that things are where they should be, i.e. the topics are where they should be, the naming convention is the way it should be, the dates are where they should be, and the way the training is going to be delivered is designed the way it should be, i.e. is it going to be self-training or is it going to be directed, delivered training in forums such as this? So I think we are where we're supposed to be based on the timelines in front of us. And the 25th March date, we've done everything we should do. And we just need to move forward now and start executing the training continuum and allow the commissioners to gain access to that information and getting ourselves educated and informed on the process. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. And my compliments again to you and the other members of the Ad Hoc Committee for getting to this point. In a way, I think this will be a very useful way to proceed because we'll be able to handle those new developments and legislative amendments and all the timeline issues as we gear our training to aim to cope with that. I should remind commissioners that after we have clarifying questions and any inputs from the public, we'll be moving to a discussion and a vote on a motion to approve. But for right now, first, let me ask if there are any clarifying questions for Commissioner Pons and the Ad Hoc Committee before we hear from any public speakers. Very good. Erin, do we have any requests from the public to speak on this item?
We did not receive any advance requests to speak on this item, but if any member of the public would like to speak, if you could please raise a virtual hand at this time. I'm seeing a hand from Mary Thompson. So you will have 3 minutes to address the commission.
Thank you very much. Mary Thompson with the League of Women Voters. Really appreciate the work. My question, it's brief, is will this database of information and training material be available to the public? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who would like to address the commission on this item? If so, please raise a virtual hand at this time. Not seeing any other hands, Chair Boehm. So that concludes the public comments on this item.
Very good. Thank you for that. To discuss the item and move towards a vote, we do need a motion. Do I have a motion to adopt the recommendations from the Ad Hoc Committee on Commissioner Training with regard to the training continuum, as was just shown on slide 3 of the presentation? I see Commissioner Inman. Do I have a second? Commissioner Diaz?
Do we answer her question? I'm sorry. I thought she asked a question about access. Is that-
Right. I specifically moved to the motion because technically we don't respond to the question from the public. Although now that we're in discussion of the motion, if a commissioner was so inclined to answer that question, they would certainly be welcome to. Not to get all procedural.
Oh, please, you are supposed to be procedural. So thank you very much.
That might be the worst thing anyone's ever said to me, Commissioner Pons. Okay. Do any commissioners wish to offer comments that may or may not address the public comment? Commissioner Pons, did you want to say something else?
I think the answer is yes, full transparency. We have nothing to hide, especially in our training continuum. So you will have full access to all information that we have. Is that correct, Barbara?
That is absolutely correct. And the ad hoc and particularly you, Commissioner Pons, made it clear that that was your priority to make sure it was available to everyone.
And I will just reinforce, not just for Ms. Thompson, grateful for the input, but for all of the members of the public joining us tonight and anyone else who is following the work of the commission or follows it in the future. Our mission continues to include as a top priority transparency and ways for the public to become more educated, engaged, and see what we're thinking and build on that dialogue, which I think all of us welcome. Commissioner Inman.
Yeah, just to continue the public transparency for this, it's going to be posted on our website. So it's simply another tab on our website. So I just wanted to complete the thought about how it becomes publicly available. It's on the website. So thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Chen.
I just want to confirm that I believe this is true, but to confirm that there are no costs associated with licensing or anything like that for any of this training, correct?
There were some proposals that had a cost associated with it. And I think when we come up to those training categories, we would have to vote on whether we want to expend money to actually conduct the training. Am I correct, Barbara?
You are correct. In the research, in one of the original documents we sent a while ago, we had the different costs, recognizing that it might change. And we'll note that when we start uploading all this information, if there is an anticipated cost.
Would that be an issue then in making this available to the public? Would we be paying for the public to be trained then?
I would not be. I defer to the to the commission on that. I don't think.
I would just be careful about. I would be careful of us making an open-ended invitation to the public to come to paid training. If we have to pay for that, that's an obligation we may not be able to fulfill. So I just would like to get that comment in.
So a disclaimer, maybe some kind of a notation. Is what I'm
Something.
hearing.
I mean, if we're if we're paying for training and it's, $10 a person, whatever that is, $100, we can't say, well, anybody in the public is welcome.
Understand.
And Commissioner Chen, I would just add to that, it's a very good point. I think it's another top priority for our commission to be good stewards of public funds and public monies. I would assume that there would be an opportunity for input when such a proposal was coming before the commission. It would be circulated as part of the agenda, and commissioners could have a chance of input to staff to make sure they understand what's involved and are prepared, therefore, for a good discussion on it. So there should be, I think, advance notice. Barbara, correct?
Yes, I think what I'm hearing Commissioner Chen also mention, if we put them on the website, like these are the upcoming trainings and there happens to be a cost, just to make it clear that maybe it sounds like we need to word it. There may be a cost associated, not covered by the IRC or something. We can work with council on that if that's sounds appropriate.
That's what I'd like. If they want to attend, they attend at their own expense.
And I'll just ask Commissioner Ponce and ad hoc committee members that that's consistent with how you've discussed it, correct? Good. I see a lot nodding. Commissioner?
From our position to the other commissioners, that's correct.
Good. Good. Thumbs up and smiles. We're in good shape. Any other comments before we move to a vote on the motion? Very good. So Aaron, I'll please ask you to call the roll for a vote on the motion to approve the recommendations from the ad hoc committee with regard to the training continuum.
Thank you. Again, we'll be calling these in random order. Commissioner Inman.
I was first twice, you know. Aye.
The random sort does that sometimes. Vice Chair Katerina.
Aye.
Commissioner Larson.
Aye.
Commissioner Serban, I believe, has not joined yet. Commissioner Krugliak.
Aye.
Commissioner Dustel is absent. Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Diaz.
Aye.
Commissioner Russ.
Aye.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
Chair Bame.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye, and I'm wondering, do you have like a commissioner randomizer somehow program that does this for you?
Yes, we do. It's a macro in Excel. Commissioner Ponce.
Aye.
Vice Chair Garcia.
Aye.
And that motion passes unanimously with all commissioners who are present voting aye.
Good. And without objection, I'm going to task Commissioner Inman to perform a statistical analysis of what are the chances that a commissioner ends up at first on the randomizer. Very good. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda for commission business is item 4, discussion and possible approval of the interim communications plan and recommendations thereto from the ad hoc committee on redistricting, outreach, and communication. A copy of the interim communications plan and associated materials was included with the overall agenda materials. As a reminder, this ad hoc committee was created with the purpose of developing recommendations for such a plan prior to the onboarding of a public outreach and engagement contractor and before census data is available, including certain specific tasks and a recommended timeline. I'll now turn to Co-Vice Chair Rosette Garcia for a presentation from this ad hoc committee. Vice Chair Garcia.
Thank you, Chair Bame. So I will be going over briefly the interim communications plan and the educational tour, which, as Chair Bame just said, is in your agenda packet, but it will also be up on the screen, and we'll just kind of scroll through it, and I'll just touch on some key points. So if we can move on to the next slide. Oh, and before I wanted actually, the slide didn't show who is on this committee. We've all been working really hard to get this completed by tonight, and that's Chair Bame and Commissioner Katerina and Commissioner Serban, who unfortunately couldn't be, hasn't able to join us yet, and myself. So the interim communications plan, as you can see, begins with the mission, which is a succinct declaration of our purpose, and basically says that we are committed to drawing fair and accurate and equitable map for the county, and to make it possible for as many broad and diverse voices to participate in the redistricting process. And then there's some background that describes redistricting and the criteria that we're going to be using. We can keep scrolling on to the next section. And then here is where we developed the key messages, and they were framed using 3 questions that you can see there in bold. What is the San Diego County Independent Redistricting Commission? Why is redistricting important? And how can the public get involved? And the content here will be basically repurposed in a lot of the materials that we'll be using going forward. I think we can continue to scroll down. And then we get to the deliverables. And the first item on the deliverables was to develop a draft of this plan, which we did, and we can continue to scroll down. And so as we go through here, you can see that that this plan has been thoroughly reviewed by staff and council, and it's been back and forth between the ad hoc committee and staff and council a couple of times at least. And so you can see some of the items that we've developed, procedures for requests from the media and from the community and from community groups if they should contact the IRC for if it's from the media, for example, for an interview or for comment, or from community groups if they're trying to reach us for some reason. There are some 2 procedure documents that were just finalized actually last night. So we haven't included them in this plan, but with this package, but you will be seeing them soon. We completed the messaging, the key messaging, and you've seen the large majority of that actually in the plan. We just saw it on the previous slide. Other collateral materials include a backgrounder, which are still it's still in process, and a PowerPoint presentation, also still in process. Can we move on to the next slide? And then we've just started meeting with staff and IT about enhancing the website. So pertinent to the piece of pertinent information for commissioners is that we would like to provide commissioner bios. It's shown there on the under the long list of items that we're looking at for the website. Bios, and we'd also like to include headshots. So in the near future, I believe you will be getting something from staff asking for your bio. And if you have a headshot, to provide that as well. And if you don't have a headshot, we are continuing to look into how we might be able to get those for commissioners who need them. With regards to the bio, in an attempt to try and be consistent, and so, you know, for the website to have a sort of a consistent look, where we'll provide some very loose guidelines, essentially a word count limit. And if commissioners would like a template for their bio, you can ask for one and we'll provide one. So other items that we want to put on the website are listed there. Timeline. Once we have for example, the PowerPoint presentation, that would go up on the website as well. And then we're looking at some other things for the website that would optimize user friendliness. And then finally, I think we're getting near the end of the plan. We have an educational tour plan, which is the other significant item that we'll look at in just a moment. Why don't we scroll through to the next page? So we have the educational tour plan and then the launch of the education tour, which we've got scheduled for April 15th. And that is actually because we've already scheduled sort of our first educational outreach event, and it's a joint event. It's a League of Women Voters event with the San Diego League of Women Voters and the North County League of Women Voters. And that's scheduled for April 15th. And then we have some optional items, which will be contingent on, timing and just actually the ability to try and get that done. So that's it for the communications plan. I'm going to keep moving forward. We'll take questions at the end. Looking at there it is, the educational tour plan. And it basically, in many ways, reiterates some of the items that are in the interim communications plan. We have objectives that are listed, who our audience, who our audiences, who we're aiming to reach, and approach and messaging. But what I just wanted to say is that the educational tour plan is intended to let the public know that we are here, to raise awareness in the county about the Independent Redistricting Commission. And it's also an opportunity for community groups to tell us about them, to tell us how we can best engage with them, tell us where they are, where they convene. But one very important point I want to make is that these are not public hearings at all. They're just educational meetings. We educate them about the IRC, and maybe we get a little education about who they are and where we might find them and how we can best engage with them. We can keep moving. We mentioned the resources. I think I already talked about it. We essentially need a PowerPoint presentation, which we're working on now, and a fact sheet, FAQs. And, this would be both on the website and potentially print as well. And then there's a list there of the deliverables, all of which are, like I said, in process. So I think we have one last slide. Yeah. So like I said, we've finished a large part of the work that the ad hoc committee has been charged with, but we still have, there are still ongoing work that we're doing. But in any case, we do have the interim communications plan, which you've been able to review. And our recommendation is that that this interim communications plan with the attached educational tour plan be approved. And I think with that, I hand it back to you, Chair Boehm. Is that true?
Very good. Thank you so much, Co-Vice Chair Garcia. Thank you, Co-Vice Chair Katerina. And thanks, with impeccable timing, to Commissioner Serban, who's just joined us and had no small role in putting this recommendation together as well. As Co-Vice Chair Garcia just mentioned, this will lead to a vote on whether to approve the interim communications plan and associated steps, including the educational tour. But before that, I want to ask if there are any clarifying questions from commissioners, then ask if there's any public comment, and then move for a motion and discussion. So for clarifying questions, I have Commissioner Chen and then Commissioner Inman. Commissioner Chen, please.
Are the impacts from the unknowns regarding when we're going to receive census data and the impacts it's going to have to our process accounted for in our communications plan?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, it seems to me that if we're communicating two ways, we're not just getting input in, but people be asking us questions and stuff. And there are a lot of unknowns, I believe, in how we're going to handle this entire process because of the delays in the census data and the unknown impacts upon our process. And I'm just wondering, is that incorporated? Are those issues incorporated into our communications plan?
I'm happy to have the other committee members chime in here, but to the extent that we can answer those questions, I mean, I would say that what we're doing in this outreach and the educational tour is really just providing information about the Independent Redistricting Commission and the information that we have at hand. So we're telling them who we are, what we're planning to do, and how they can participate. And this is just a plan. Actually, it's an interim plan that we're going to be executing between now and the onboarding of our outreach consultant. So I understand. I mean, we're all very concerned about the delays, but I'm not. And we'll answer questions of the public if they ask that question, but we can only answer to the extent that we have, you know, the information that we have, which is that the census data is delayed. We're expecting it, you know, at this time. And I'm not sure. Would anybody else like to chime in from the committee?
Sure, if you don't mind. You know, how I look at this, if it's okay, David, how I look at this is a bridge. We have time right now. This is a great opportunity for us to use this interim period until our consultant is onboarded to communicate what's going on with the Redistricting Commission in San Diego County and who we are, what our role is, and then also to learn about these organizations that are coming to us and wanting to engage. We wouldn't be discussing real redistricting business. We wouldn't be discussing maps, anything along those lines. It really is intended to be an educational outreach to the community to inform them about the Redistricting Commission and what we do. And I think while it is unfortunate that we have a delay, we have a significant delay, but it does give us an opportunity to understand our communities better. And I think that will benefit the commission in the long run. Ultimately, when a new consultant is hired and onboarded, they will be developing a communications plan for the remainder of the year. So from that period, likely June through December. And they would be the organization that would be charged with trying to figure out how to navigate the delays and the communication of those delays. And I hope that answers your question, Commissioner Chen.
Very valid concern. Thanks for the answers as well. Commissioner Inman, then Commissioner Diaz.
Yes, thank you. My question is about deliverables. So I did hear like a PowerPoint is a deliverable, a one pager is a deliverable that's going to be presented to the public or in these meetings. Do those have to have formal approval from the IRC, or would this motion give you the authority to create deliverables on behalf of the IRC and push those out? That's my question.
Let me give it a shot. So the deliverables that you haven't seen yet, which are the PowerPoint presentation and the FAQ and the key messages, that's all going to come from the things that you have seen already in the interim communications plan and the materials that are already on the website. We won't be creating anything new. I think the short answer to your question is that, I mean, we could bring those items back if that's what the commission wanted. But I do believe that the ad hoc committee thought that we would proceed and absolutely take input from the commission once they saw the presentation or the PowerPoint presentation or whatever. But those materials are going to be developed in collaboration with staff and with the county communications office. So I'm not sure, did I answer your question or?
Yeah, you answered the question. Yes, thank you.
And I would just add that some of this falls into the same kind of category as what's been going on with the existing procedures and website updates and things. There are some things that go on. They will always be open to commission input. And in particular, where I'd really like to remind commissioners to keep in mind the living nature of these, some of those key points, like when are you going to circulate maps and when will public hearings occur, are going to be evolving topics. So there's, I think, some very good material in here developed by the ad hoc committee, but there's certainly material that's going to need to continue to be adjusted, expanded, refined as things move on. Commissioner Serban, did you want to weigh in on this?
I think generally the intent was to, with the general intent with this motion is to allow for the operation of the ad hoc committee to exercise its sound judgment and discretion in producing whatever materials we deem necessary. And I think, I mean, if the commission now as a whole expresses a desire to do otherwise, then sure, we can change course. But I think what I would prefer is for us to be able to just produce these materials and put them out there. I mean, if the commission wants us to come back and like have a hand in drafting these materials, then okay, that's okay too. It just seems like that would be sort of, that's the point of having a committee to do this work.
And one other thing I'll point out, these, for example, if it's the PowerPoint, the presentation that you were most interested in, I think it's going to be sort of, well, it will have specific enough information, but I think it will also be general and broad enough, and so that if you, Commissioner Inman, were to use that PowerPoint to make a presentation, you'd have the latitude to like move the slides around, and it's you know what I mean. It's not, you wouldn't have to be sort of hamstrung in the way that you presented that information, if that makes any sense.
Very good. Commissioner Diaz.
Yes, my question, by the way, fabulous plan. I love it. My question is, how much of a role will the county have as far as, like, for example, I know there's the setup of the social media pages, and I guess I would love as a commissioner to get the word out as much as possible. And so I know there's some documents that are being drafted underway that we will be seeing that will explain what that process is, correct? Because I understand this is an interim plan, but also I want to make sure that I'm allowed to post something on, with using this criteria that you just presented us, and so that we would get that properly trained in how to do that. Also, if I get a request from a town council to come and do a presentation, that I'll have that I'll be properly trained as a commissioner to be able to carry that out. Or will I have to still have a county representative there with me? That's one question. My other question is, as far as translation goes, like say we're visiting a community where, it's non-English speaking and I don't have the ability to translate, how would I be supported in that? Will some of the materials be able to be translated beforehand? Is that a county service that we would rely on, or would we translate it ourselves? And then my third question would be, when we onboard the new consultant, would the consultant be able to take all of the information that we gathered and all of our best practices when we implemented this interim plan, and take parts of it that worked well to incorporate it into their new plan of what we asked for them?
So can I just start with the first question? In asking the content of the social media content, and I guess and also you had asked about going out into community groups and conducting educational presentations or making appearances. When you were contemplating doing that, were you picturing that you would create the content yourself, or are you asking whether the county or this body would provide commissioners with that content to post on social media and present to these groups? Which one? Or is that which were you thinking?
Yeah, so what would I be provided as part of my training to make sure that I'm following what we're adopting today as far as the messaging goes?
Well, I guess what I mean to ask you is, so are you thinking that you would post your own social media you would use social media to post your own content? And you're asking if we would be able to have some training that makes sure that the content you create on your own is consistent with whatever messaging we're trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, for example, I would love to just tell everybody, hey, we meet, 2 Thursdays a month, come to our meetings or these times, because people don't know that we even have a website that exists. So I don't want to drag this on, but I was just wanted some clarity on how, I guess I would have to see what we're going to be presented with, the documents or that would explain what that is. Because I'm ready like tomorrow to do this. But, my understanding is that this is what this plan is for, to help us with that.
Yes, and actually, maybe Barbara or I'm not sure who would want to speak to this, but I believe in our bylaws, it allows commissioners to use social media to communicate on matters like meeting times, right?
Yeah, and so a couple of things, if I may. I'm looking at re-looking at the communication plan, and I know the setup, the social media pieces, and some of those are still being worked on. If I'm reading this correctly, it's still to be determined. I know you all had an initial conversation with our county communications office in terms of some exactly those same things. Commissioner Diaz, about how do you start with the county where we have a large amount of followers, and then, or do you start with a blank slate and then kind of build that up, and then what happens when the outreach and engagement contractor comes on board? How do you make sure you're leveraging that? So I know there was a lot of discussion around that. If I recall correctly, I'm going to have council confirm, but I believe we would need to do some sort of an amendment to the bylaws, depending on the depth or level of the social media. I'll have them confirm if I'm on the right track with that. But I think that on the other, regarding staff attending, I mean, staff is happy to attend, can take notes, can be a support. But it doesn't envision per se. I don't think that was the direction that the ad hoc was going, that we would be the speakers or the representatives, of course, not by any means. Translation, I would gather that we would leverage the commission's current translation efforts and budget, and we've indicated that potentially when we go to the board, there might be more cost in the translation, and I know the budget ad hoc is looking at that, but this might be something where we look at, we're going to need additional things translated, we'll need additional material translated as well. Where we can leverage the county staff, we're happy to do that. But I see that Hillary just popped on. I think it's in section 9 of our bylaws. If Hillary, you can clarify just the social media piece?
Yeah, Barbara, you and Commissioner Garcia are both exactly right. The bylaws don't currently allow substantive communications on social media, but they do allow commissioners to share details about meeting logistics like time, place, and agenda. So both of those things are true, and the bylaws can always be adjusted if needed to facilitate additional activity.
Is there a basis? What is the basis for the bylaws having been written that way? Is there a reason for us? I mean, aside from like, I guess there's probably some Brown Act thing where we don't want to take like public comment through social media channels. Is that it?
I don't know, Barbara, if you want to address that from the starting point for the bylaws, or we're happy to provide thoughts on it as well.
You can provide thoughts, because I actually was not involved in the initial. I believe our county council may have, or some sort of inherited those, but no, I don't have the background on that.
So I think there's various provisions in the bylaws about communications. The commission has a spokesperson in the chair. And so part of it is to reconcile with that. Commissioner Serban, I think you're exactly right about the Brown Act and not wanting to, we talked about this a little in our training at the beginning, but social media is a place where it's very easy to have an inadvertent Brown Act violation where, you know, people are liking things and adding just kind of benign comments, and then all of a sudden you have a quorum and a discussion. So I think there's a variety of kind of best practices reasons for that type of policy in the bylaws.
I would just add that if and when we pursue amendments to that section of the bylaws, and I think we've talked about it before, it's not just a matter of saying we need to open it up. It's a matter of saying, how do we open it up in a way that's most productive, that can not only respect Brown Act rules, as Hillary just described, but also provide some sort of recording of entry for history so that it can be reviewed and look back in the past when we say get to some further action. The good news is, in the discussions, at least I've heard within the ad hoc committee and with county staff, this is very much on people's minds, and there are undoubtedly going to be ways to do it, I think, or options to consider, let's say, above and beyond the simple procedural points that I think Commissioner Diaz was talking about for now, but as Commissioner Serban and others have said before, to make sure we're upping the game, as it were, to get the word out and have that dialogue with all due respect for not violating any rules of the Brown Act regarding meetings, but also making sure we've captured those thoughts and can draw on them appropriately as we move forward.
And I just wanted to just kind of go back quickly over Commissioner Diaz's questions, because I think it's important to look at the process that we went through, and it's very much the process that she just went through. So we looked at this opportunity to do these educational tours, and we thought this would be a great opportunity for commissioners who are interested to get out into their community and talk about what they're doing with the commission and learn more about the groups in their community. And in order to do that, yes, of course, some of them are going to need to be trained. Some perhaps would like to do it, don't have a lot of experience doing it, might want to feel a little bit more comfortable. So when we reached out to Barbara and staff and the corporate communications office, they were very generous in offering to provide training to commissioners who might need it. In addition, we talked about translation a lot because it is a big line item expense in our budget, and it is something that we need to provide. And so that was kind of one of the ideas behind developing key messages, because those key messages can be generally translated, and the reuse of those messages makes the process a lot more effective on a cost side for if we do need to do translations. And that was also recommended to us by staff and the corporate communications office, or the county communications office rather. So those were just part of the process that we went through to come up with a plan that we felt could now get us to the third question that Commissioner Diaz had, which was, how do we transition all this to the new consultant coming in? And the idea was that we were not going to go out of our way to spend money and create a brand, because that's what our consultant's going to do. They're going to create a look and a feel that represents our commission. But until then, there is work to be done. There is work we can do, and there's work we feel that's important to be done to get out into the community, to learn about our community members, and for them to learn about what our commission is. If any of you have talked to people in the community, there is confusion over what is a county commissioner, what is a city commissioner, what is the CRC at the state. So there is a lot of opportunity for us, and we do have the time right now. So the idea was we create something that we can easily implement, relatively easily, with the help of the county staff and the county commissioner's office, and get out there. We did put the note out on social media, and it is an option, but we decided in the end, on the recommendation of the county communications office, to leverage the existing county communication channels and not develop our own. We do have it as an optional item, but it seems that our new onboard consultant may want to brand us or come up with a name to describe us, and we would then have to start over with a social media presence. And so the idea was that we would leverage the county's presence, and they're agreeable to help us in communicating and help us with our launch of this event. So I think that that's kind of the package in a nutshell. And you know, of course, we're happy to answer any more questions as they come up.
So I think I'd like to pose a question to council if we can, which is, it seemed like there was some concern from council as to the content or the intent behind the educational / listening tour. And I'm curious, what's the threshold that triggers the requirement to conduct that sort of an event as a noticed meeting with minutes and all of that?
Hillary or Marguerite, are you available?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Barbara. I'm popping on because it's kind of a crossover question there. Good evening, Commissioner Servin. It's the presence of a quorum that makes a meeting. So the concern hasn't been that. It's just that we are going to have our best ambassadors that are our commissioners out in the public receiving input. And the concern has been to be able to capture that input, because it's going to be valuable and important to your process. And that is, that's the gist of it. That as you present and introduce yourselves and your processes, and the community speaks to you, to be able to make a record so that we can include it for the benefit of the entire commission when they come to the mapping phase.
So it isn't necessarily a Brown Act requirement to like record like each piece of input that we receive. Okay.
No, but I think to have that out of respect for the community and to include that into your process, these are important things you're going to be hearing, and to work with staff to develop those methods where we can capture that input.
So would a video recording of an event like of an event of the type that we envision, would that suffice to address the concerns?
Yes, we can include that in our record. Yes.
Good. Thank you both for that and for the clarifications on earlier comments. I'll add a footnote to what Vice Chair Caterina and Commissioner Diaz were talking about with regard to training. I did notice that the training continuum includes several of these topics as potential or planned events, and certainly things that can be addressed earlier rather than later as needed. With that, not seeing any more clarification questions, let me ask Erin if there are any requests from the public to speak on this matter.
Thank you, Chair Boehm. We didn't receive any advance requests, but if anyone would like to speak on this item, if you could please raise your virtual hand at this time and we'll call on you. Not seeing any virtual hands, Chair Boehm.
Very good. So to wrap up the discussion that we just had in the question and answer period, do we have a motion to approve the interim communication plan and recommendations? We can put that slide back up if you like. The text on it read, for the Independent Redistricting Commission to approve the interim communications plan with the IRC to receive regular updates on the plan's implementation and any adjustments thereto.
I move to approve the motion.
Commissioner Pons, thank you. Second, Commissioner Brown, thank you. Any further discussion? Very good. Erin, I'll ask you to please call the roll for the vote, but if a certain commissioner's name comes up first, you are to redo the randomizer. Thank you.
The randomizer has Commissioner Larson first this time. So Commissioner Larson, thank you. Commissioner Dostal is absent. Chair Bame,
Aye.
Commissioner Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Inman,
Aye.
Commissioner Diaz,
Aye.
Commissioner Pons,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Krugliak,
Aye.
Commissioner Servin,
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Russ,
Aye.
Vice Chair Garcia,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Katarina.
Aye.
Thank you. And that motion passes unanimously with all commissioners who are present voting aye.
Thank you very much, Erin. Thank you, commissioners. And again, to both ad hoc committees that brought these action items today, thanks. Wonderful job and more work to do. We now move on to item 5 on the commissioner's business agenda, an opportunity for the remaining ad hoc committees to provide very brief reports. In keeping with our usual procedures, we'll hear comments from the public after the presentations, then have an opportunity for commissioners to offer clarifying questions. I'd ask commissioners to keep questions or comments brief, bearing in mind that there is no action to be taken on these 3 reports. With that in mind, we'll start with Commissioner Inman's update on the Demographic Services RFP. Again, this ad hoc committee was formed with the purpose of creating a draft RFP that will be presented for public and potential offeror feedback at an industry procurement day, along with creating evaluation criteria and scoring values. Commissioner Inman.
Yes, thank you. So our ad hoc committee composed of Commissioners Hanson, Larson, as well as a lot of input from legal, from Barbara Jimenez, Liberty Donnelly, as well as other people. It's much appreciated. We've made a lot of progress. And right now, I expect we will have documents ready sometime next week that we can, that will serve the purpose of setting and scheduling an industry day. So that's the next major milestone, is having our industry day. And that industry day is, we've kind of kicked around a few ideas. One of the ideas is to have the industry day in conjunction with our, what would that be, April 8th regular IRC meeting. So, you know, we would take whatever time, hour and a half, something like that for industry day, and then have normal business of the IRC. It could make for a longer regular meeting, depending on how efficient we are on each of these topics. So that's one idea that has been floated. It kind of makes it easy for commissioners, I would assume, because, you know, we're there, we would have a quorum. We do need a quorum for the industry day presentation. So it has to be a time where we have more than 50% of commissioners present. So that's one option. Another option is to do it like we did last time, where we find time probably during that first week or the first week when we actually have that meeting. Yeah, so between the 5th and the 9th, something like that. We just schedule an alternative time. So both of those are being considered. And we should be ready to actually do that scheduling though next week. So because we would request input from commissioners as to what they would prefer. Chair Bame, I know he has to manage the schedule and make sure we're not here for too long a time. Otherwise, he has to give us milk and cookies or something like that to keep us going. So I suppose if you wanted to take input from commissioners now as a preference, or we could have commissioners express a preference if they have one to Barbara Jimenez offline, that might be more expedient. If you have a preference for a specific day between the 5th and the 9th, or if you want to do it as part of our regular IRC meeting, subject to Chair Bame concurring with that decision. But that's it. That's our update.
And before we proceed, and I think if it's okay with the commission, I'll turn to Barbara next, just for any clarification. Let me just point out, because as Commissioner Inman was talking about it, there is the possibility of doing this as an agenda item. That doesn't specifically require a vote, just like we don't vote on the agenda in advance, but it would certainly be helpful, and I think actually well recommended for the commission to voice some opinion on when to have it. Barbara, do you want to offer a comment and any additional suggestions or clarifications?
Sure, and Commissioner Inman covered it. We were looking at, as you all know, the previous industry day, we noticed it as a special meeting. It only requires a 24-hour special notice, but it was noticed in advance. Since you will have a quorum of commissioners, we wanted to ensure that we would allow the opportunity for discussion if you needed to, even though you're receiving input from potential providers. One of the advantages of doing in conjunction with your commission meeting is you already have it scheduled. You could do it a time certain on your agenda. You could do it before your regular scheduled agenda. It also may drive additional people to the commission meetings, whether, that might be interested in it and stay on. Or you could do it after your regular meeting. So I think those are all different options, or you could do it as a special meeting again. And so those are all the different options. We'd like the input, however you would like to receive the input, Commissioner Bain, whether it's this evening or sending it to us as soon as possible, because we do want to finalize that flyer and get it out and get it out to folks to invite them and let them know in that information.
And because of that urgency, before I turn to public comment and then questions, comments from commissioners, I just want to get a little bit more on something you said. It would be possible to, in effect, gather a little earlier on April 8th, have a session that maybe it's a special meeting, maybe it's defined some other way, but probably a special meeting since we already did that once for an industry day. But we would have that industry day period immediately before the regular meeting. And then we could just simply switch and go into the regular meeting. Did I understand you correctly on that?
That's my understanding. And I'll defer to council if I'm mistaken, if we need to either, if we want to keep it on the same agenda, make it time certain, but notice it as a earlier meeting and then break and then go into the regular, or if it could just be noticing everyone that the meeting is actually starting earlier and that's part of the agenda.
Marguerite or Hillary, do you want to comment on that?
Barbara's right. We can figure out the noticing to accommodate what the commission's preferences are here.
Thank you for that. As always, the flexibility is appreciated. Final introductory note, I am thinking, and I would welcome commissioner comment on how to balance this. If we do it within our regular meeting, almost by definition, that means we're going to have a rather extended meeting. I'm happy to follow the commission's advice and will on this, but I am cautious when I can see other issues, one of which in particular we're going to talk about in a minute concerning the budget, that may be requiring some time at that meeting. But again, I'm first and foremost interested in hearing from the public and then the commission on what might be best. So with that, Aaron, let me ask you first, or do we have any requests from the public to comment?
We did not receive any advance requests, but if anyone would like to speak on this item, please raise your virtual hand at this time and we will recognize you. Not seeing any virtual hands, Chair Boehm. Thank you.
Very good. So we will turn to clarifying questions and comments from commissioners, starting with Commissioner Larson.
Well, I don't like extended meetings. However, I think we might want to have one in this case. And starting at 1 o'clock, having the regular industry day, and then immediately adjourn and begin a second meeting, our regular meeting. So that would be my idea.
Very good, thank you. Other comments, questions?
That sounds good to me.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea.
Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, I mean, we've had one experience now with an industry day and it didn't take all that long. I mean, there wasn't a lot of comments. So I think we can learn from that and schedule accordingly.
Very good. All right, not seeing any comment then, and I in particular want to check again with the members of the ad hoc committee. Shall we just then turn it over to staff to see what works best for any number of scheduling, bandwidth, and other questions, and we'll just defer to them. But if I'm understanding it right, there is not any real appetite to do an industry day on a separate day. I haven't seen anyone looking at that as an option. Good. So I think we'll just defer then to the ad hoc committee and to staff and council on considering all the different factors, what's the easiest, best way forward. And we will make sure to inform commissioners and the public well in advance, certainly alongside, if it's part of the regular meeting, the usual 72-hour advance notice. If it's in some other format, we'll still try to get advance notice out as soon as possible. Does that sound acceptable? Any further comment or question? Barbara, does that give you what you need? Good. Very good. Thank you again. Thank you, Commissioner Inman. Thank you, commissioners on the ad hoc committee. I know there's a lot of work going on this, well beyond what Commissioner Inman gave us in his brief vote, but I know he's still shell-shocked at being at the top of the randomized list. I will stop using that line, sorry. We'll now hear from the Outreach and Engagement Services RFP from Co-Vice Chair Katerina. This ad hoc committee was created to create a draft RFP for an industry procurement day, which did indeed occur on March 18th. Thanks for that. Thanks to all who participated, as well as to create evaluation criteria and scoring values. They were also asked to consider revision of the RFP to incorporate applicable feedback and present them as that feedback at a subsequent IRC meeting. I'll turn now to Co-Vice Chair Katerina.
Thank you. I think there should be a slide. There we go. Can all see it? Just a quick summary for you. We've had a few meetings. Obviously, we had our industry day on March 18th. We've had a planning meeting on March 15th, and then we did have a short meeting on the 17th just to go over the agenda for industry day. The industry day summary, I think, despite the fact that there were not a lot of questions from potential offerers, we did need to ask questions, and we needed them to know what we were concerned about, what we're specifically looking for. And that was really the genesis behind the list of questions that we had. We did have 58 total attendees at the meeting, and 36 were designated as offerers or potential offerers. The county communications office distributed our announcement to over 28,000 folks in San Diego County on a variety of their different types of lists that they have. And they were very helpful in helping us craft a unique list, unique list for our RFP. We did receive some public comments, and we're now incorporating those comments as well as any feedback from the BiNet system. And our next step is to complete the RFP and present it to the IRC for approval. And our plan is to have that hopefully on April 8th at our next IRC meeting, that we would be presenting our final RFP for commissioner approval. I'm available to answer any questions. Our other committee members are Commissioner Diaz and Commissioner Garcia. And we've been working very diligently to make sure that we have a very strong RFP for our potential offers to review. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks for that presentation. Before I move to clarifying questions and comments from commissioners, I'd like to ask Erin if there are any requests from the public to speak on this item.
We did not receive any advance requests, but if anyone would like to address the commission on this item, please raise your virtual hand at this time. Not seeing any requests to speak on this item, Chair Boehm.
I'm sorry, very good. Commissioner Russ?
So we actually did have offerers or potential bidders. At the beginning of our meeting tonight, I said I didn't hear anything from any potential bidders, but they were out there. Is that correct? They were actually identified as potential bidders, just that we didn't hear from them?
Yeah, I'll let Barbara talk about the potential offers that she was able to identify, but this does play back a little bit to the discussion. Sometimes offerers go to these meetings, they want to see who else is attending, they want to see what kinds of questions are asked, so they know how to fine tune their their proposal, but they don't want to answer the question because they might be giving away some trade secrets to one of their competitors. So it's a little bit of a dance that you do when you go to these events. Sometimes a small offerer, someone maybe who might be a subcontractor might speak up just to let the prime contractor know that they're out there. But it is an interesting process. As I said, we did want to make sure that they understood the issues that were important to us and things that were going to be somewhat unique given where we are in this COVID world. And I think we were able to get that message out, but we didn't get a lot of questions. So sometimes you think, oh, it wasn't very successful, but I feel like it was a very successful industry day. And Barbara, if you could address more specifically the question on the offers, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, and my apologies, Commissioner Russ, because I had sent the data to the ad hoc committee. I was trying to find the numbers, but I have it in front of me. So a couple clarification. We went back to BINET to check how many folks actually went back to look at the documents, and we had 22 that went back. It could be a mixture again of community advocates, potential offers, people kind of trying to see if this is something they're interested in. There were a total of 58 attendees that did include under offers and public 36. So I would not say it's all offers or all public. It's a combination of 36. And then we had the county staff and the IRC and council. One thing I did want to clarify, because I think this is important for the rest of the next set of industry day and any potential RFPs, is the IRC team actually did the distribution of all of the leadership teams and the mailings, the 28,000 that Commissioner Katarina referenced. So the county communications helped with all the Twitter, and we do have 141,000 followers on Twitter. They posted that on their Twitter, and on the days of leading up, so March 16th, 17th, and 18th, they were able to garner for us between 7,100 and almost 10,000 impressions of the industry day flyer. The distribution list, the IRC, we manage that, the staff manages it, and it's a combination. And the reason I mentioned, and I think it's important, is because as you all identify more potential community members, groups, chambers, send it to us and we can keep it for you. At this point, we leverage the entities that we work. And then, as you may recall, I reached out to you all and you submitted names or potentials, and we also are managing that. So there's a lot of great opportunity, I think, to continue to get the word out, both on what the IRC is doing and Industry Day. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. And you answered the preempted question. I was going to say how many were on the BINET, and you answered that. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Any other questions or comments on this ad hoc committee? Very good. So moving on, the final update tonight will be from the ad hoc committee to develop a redistricting budget recommendation. This ad hoc committee was formed with the purpose to review the budgetary impact of changes to the contract with legal counsel, to develop recommendations for an update to the redistricting budget as a basis for a request to the Board of Supervisors, and to consider the creation of a standing committee and return to the full commission for consideration. For this report, I'll call on Commissioner Diaz, please.
Thank you, Chair Bain. I'll be brief. I would say that we're, the members of our ad hoc committee worked over the last week, and we're still in the information gathering stages. We met on the 15th and the 23rd, and there are probably going to be more meetings planned on this issue. We started by wrapping our heads around some of the major expense categories in our current budget that you recall was approved on October 13th at the Board of Supervisors meeting. And we wanted to ask staff for clarification. We got a little bit more clarification on the projected increase in expenditures as noted from the previous meetings and staff reports that we've seen. And we've also done a little bit of our own research in other budget practices of other commissions. And so our next steps, I should back up. We also got a little bit further information about the role of general counsel versus external legal services to better assess the changes in the contract. What process was undertaken to select external counsel in October? What's the status of the revised contract, and understand what was budgeted versus what is being proposed. And then we also discussed the possibility of establishing some kind of method to share these invoices and billed hours with IRC prior to just basically creating some kind of role for the IRC as far as oversight. As it's noted, recommend practices for approval of IRC contractor invoices. And so that it also includes legal, and even for example, our contractors that we will be hiring soon for our RFPs for the demographer and the outreach and engagement. So I imagine by probably, I'm not sure, maybe the next meeting we might come up with a recommendation, but I would say we still are in the information gathering stage, and we'll be in touch with the full IRC very soon on next steps. I am more than happy to answer any questions, and also Commissioner Katarina and Commissioner Larson were also very helpful in putting this information together. And we'll be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Diaz, and thanks to the other members of the ad hoc committee. Before we turn to clarifying questions and comments, Erin, are there any requests from the public to speak on this item?
We did not receive any advance requests to speak on this item, but if anyone would like to speak, please raise a virtual hand at this time. I'm not seeing any virtual hands, Chair Boehm. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Commissioners, any clarifying questions or comments on this ad hoc committee's report? Very good. Thank you for that. Thanks again to all the presenters and all the commissioners working on the ad hoc committees for your time and effort in moving the work of the full commission forward. We now turn to item 6 on the agenda, the monthly budget update. First, we'll ask staff for some brief comments, including from Nicole, I assume. As we just heard from the ad hoc committee on a redistricting budget recommendation, that committee is continuing its work and will bring forward recommendations to the full commission for any changes when they've completed their information gathering and analysis. And I'll invite the ad hoc commission that if you have not formed your recommendations in time for the next meeting, please feel free to provide any further updates or information gathering results that you think would be worth sharing. That said, staff is providing us with a monthly budget update, and tonight again is an informational item with no action needed from the commission at this point. So first we'll hear from Nicole, then we'll invite any public comment, and then provide commissioners a chance to offer clarifying questions or comments. Nicole, please.
Thank you, Chairman Boehm. As you mentioned, the ad hoc committee's work is in progress, so I'll just provide a brief highlight of the expenditures listed in the staff report as an informational update to the commission. So in summary, about $63,000 has been expended to date, with additional projected expenditures of just over $9,000. The largest expenditure of about $60,000 is for the contracted services of outside redistricting counsel from last November through January of this year. The commission has previously discussed this contract, and the ad hoc committee is reviewing the budgetary impact of any changes. Next, expenditures for information technology equipment includes monthly charges from the county's IT contractor for commissioner laptops, network access, and email addresses. The actual and projected amounts represent total monthly charges for these items through March. Next, the IT other category includes the projected monthly charges for the service that enables the commission to host these webinars and virtual meetings through March. Moving on to translation and interpretation. Projected expenditures of about $7,000 are for translation of commission meeting agendas through Industry Day on March 18th and other website content based on the translation requirements of the California Elections Code. And that concludes the monthly budget status update that has been provided to the commissioners for regular ongoing transparency in reporting to the public and accountability over the use of public funds. Subject to your questions, I'll turn back to Chairman Bee.
Thank you very much, Nicole. As always, it's appreciated. Before I open the floor to commissioners, Aaron, are there any requests from the public to speak on this item?
We did not receive any advance requests, but if any members of the public would like to address the commission, please raise a virtual hand at this time. I'm not seeing any virtual hands, Chair Boehm. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any clarifying questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Pons.
I guess my question is, has anything changed from the last report from budget plan versus budget execution? Did we spend anything that wasn't planned for?
The overall budget, the line item budget, the budgeted amounts have not changed for the commission, no. And the expenditures that were incurred were anticipated, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Chen.
Just on the cover sheet, it references that we spent $64,000 on IT expenses. Is that just a mistake then? That was really legal expenses?
The attachment has the detail of the line items where the expenditures were made.
It's item 6. It's the actually the head of the item, agenda item overview, budget status update are the two headers. It says as of March 17, $63,393 has been expended from the commission's budget for IT services.
Yes, Commissioner Chen, you are correct. That should also include legal services. You're
okay.
Correct. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good catch.
See, I really do read this stuff.
We will correct that, and thank you for pointing that out. Sorry that we missed that. I apologize. 5 of us or 6 of us must have all looked at it. And we can repost or update that correction.
I just wanted to embarrass you. Move on.
No, in all seriousness, it's appreciated and important. We want to be clear about all this. Any other clarifying questions or comments? Very good. That concludes the business before the commission today. Our next meeting, and I'll use this opportunity to ask if there are any additional comments commissioners want to make. Seeing none. So the next meeting, the regular meeting of the Independent Redistricting Commission will be Thursday, April 8th at 2 p.m. Without further comment, the meeting is adjourned at 7:47 p.m. Thank you all.